Well, it's official, ladies and gentlemen. The LA Galaxy are back. That's right. The LA Galaxy are officially back in 13th place. Hello, hola, and buenas, LA Galaxy fans, and welcome back to another special edition of La Cuna Galaxiana called Los GaTacticos. And yeah, like I said, we're back, just not in the place where we wanted to be, which is in the doldrums of 13th place. 2023 settings all over again. Okay, well, maybe it's not that deep, but this was clearly a less than ideal start for the LA Galaxy. And a big reason for their poor performance was a struggling and essentially non-existent midfield, especially without the presence of their talisman, Riqui Puig, who is out for that long-term ACL injury. And yeah, we just laid a complete stinker against San Diego. But in today's episode, we're going to look forward. We're going to look at why the midfield struggled so much. And of course, towards the end, we are going to take a look at to see the one thing that this midfield needs to improve over the next few weeks, especially with CONCACAF Champions Cup and a heavily congested schedule just around the corner. So, guys, first of all, thank you again for tuning in. If you enjoyed this episode or any of our past work, or you like Alex more than me, which is probably likely the case, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, guys. We just reached 500 subs last week and are well on our way to 600. And I know that with your support, we can get there probably by April. So please hit that subscribe button, hit that notification bell so you don't miss the next video or the next time we're on live over on the main pod, where Rob and I sort of live on Monday and Thursday at 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time. So hopefully we'll see you there. But before we go any further, let me introduce myself as one of your co-hosts. My name is Ananda Kirana, one half of La Cuna Galaxiana. And as I always say, you can always follow me, block me, or stalk me at Ananda Galaxiana. And of course, you can always engage with myself and Rob online at La Cuna Galaxiana. Pretty simple handle there on all your social platforms. This is our 5th edition of the show, first show of the 2025 season, and we're still not canceled. So again, really, really appreciate your support. And as always, the other half of La Cuna is taking the night off. So with me today, of course, is the other Minister of Defense, Profe Alex Ruiz of the Galactic Tribune. Alex, how you doing today, man? And tell the people where they can find you online as always.
Yeah, hi Ananda, how you doing? Great to be back here on Los GaTacticos for 2025. Really excited for the topic we're going to discuss. And yeah, if you want to find more of me and my work, it's at thegalactictribune.org, where we cover the LA Galaxy. And you can also find me on X, Twitter, at ALXRRuiz15.
Sweet, man. Well, before we go any further, we have to take just one last little bit back. And you know how we roll here in La Cuna Galaxiana, the one-word reaction. So hit me with your one-word reaction, man, of that unfortunate home opening loss, a surprise to many to San Diego FC.
Yeah, I think the one word that comes to mind to me, Ananda, is underwhelming. Look, the expectations and the bar was already pretty low for the LA Galaxy kind of heading into this year. Obviously, everybody knew Riqui Puig wasn't going to be here. Everybody knew about the changes in the midfield and just across the team of players who were on the championship squad last year that are no longer on that team this year. And San Diego looked really good. I was asking a lot of our colleagues that day in the press box, was it the case of San Diego looked really good or the LA Galaxy looked really bad? And given that the expectations were already kind of low for the LA Galaxy and that they underwhelmed given those lower expectations, yeah, it just overall just wasn't, a great night after, the trophy ceremony and the banner unveil. After that, the team and everybody's just going to be looking at the film like we're going to do today and just be trying to develop a bit more and, be more cohesive and look more like that championship team from last season.
Yeah, underwhelming is definitely one of the right words. I mean, Rob took it a step further and he said he was shocked. It was a shocking performance. Coming into the end, I don't know if you saw the betting odds, Alex, but 73% win probability for the LA Galaxy. Yeah. That was not to be. So I think the shocking, the underwhelming, the sort of surprise, I think that all comes in a neat little package. But before we get into this deep dive,
if you bet anything on the LA Galaxy that night, it was very bad for you.
Yeah. And if you bet anything on San Diego, well, I'm not your financial advisor, but you probably did pretty well. So, anyways, before we deep dive into sort of what we saw last Sunday with all the, the video and video analysis and footage and all that stuff, I wanted to set up this conversation first, Alex, with sort of the backdrop, right, of what happened over the summer, and I think the major impact that this is having on this midfield. So, just to level set the conversation, I'm going to pull this up. This is just a quick summary of all the players in and players out. I sort of highlighted the midfield pieces there in red. So if you look at on the way out, unfortunately, Mark Delgado, really, really good servant to the club, excellent player in that midfield, went to LAFC in exchange for 200,000 in GAM in 2025 and 200,000 in 2026 GAM. Gaston Brugman was another out as well in a swap deal with Nashville for midfielder Sean Davis and a conditional 100K GAM. And guess what, Alex? The last out in that midfield was none other than Sean Davis, who was then later waived just recently. So again, very, very interesting sort of what happened there. But let's talk about the ins, right? And I think we'll spend a little bit of time on this, which is we got younger, Alex, in that midfield. We acquired two 21-year-olds, one Lucas Sanabria from Uruguay inside Nacional on a 5-year deal for a reported $5 million fee, even though it says undisclosed there. That's sort of the reported figure that's been bandied about in the press. And Elijah Wynder, a young player from USL side Louisville City FC. Again, a really, really bright prospect. His brother plays over at Benfica. So again, a lot of pedigree, football pedigree in that family. He was acquired for 400K. And like I said, we just got a lot younger. But of course, as we get young, I think it's obvious that there's a lot that we're losing out of really two stalwarts, two starling level players in that midfield, right, Alex, with Gaston Brugman and Mark Delgado. So, and you can chime in here as well, but what are the big things that we're losing in these two players? I mean, the biggest thing is experience, right? As in particular, MLS experience, familiar with this league, and also experience with Greg Vanney. Remember, Mark Delgado's played with two of Greg Vanney's teams, and just the ability to understand their roles individually and what the system asks for collectively as well. I mean, when we were discussing and getting ready for this, you told me like these guys, they understood and memorized these patterns of play like the back of their hand, right? They could probably play blindfold if they wanted to. I mean, proven players in possession, controlling tempo of the game with, their quality of passes and the timing and the tempo of their passes. And Delgado, if you look at the individual qualities, I mean, Delgado had a huge engine, right? And that was really, really key to winning the second ball, winning balls back in that middle of the park and covering ground. And Brugman, a different type of player than Mark Delgado, but really, really sound positionally. And again, just he has a killer long ball. I mean, I think that's an underrated part of his game, just his pass accuracy and the way he's able to thread line breaking passes through that midfield, Alex. So, I mean, anything that I missed there that sticks out to you before we sort of profile these new young players we have in the midfield?
Yeah, I think quickly, just one thing that you mentioned, bringing up all the topics you had, I think it's just the confidence in these players, not only in their abilities and themselves, but just having the trust of the coaching staff and of their teammates, knowing that A, they're going to be in position. Greg doesn't need to yell at them. He's not, kind of like babysitting them or telling them what to do all the time. So, Greg can kind of take a step back a little bit. The other thing as well is the players around them know their tendencies. They know their abilities. Like you mentioned right now, Ananda, I think a lot of people knew that Gaston Brugman was really good when it came to playing those switch balls, playing those long balls, those line breaking passes. Same thing with Mark Delgado, right? Everybody knew Mark Delgado was going to track back. Everybody knew Mark Delgado was going to read space as well. So you didn't kind of have to think of what am I going to do and then what's my teammate going to do. You can just focus on what you need to do because you already know what kind of run Mark Delgado is going to make on that right side of the pitch. So yeah, I think confidence both in the teammates and in the coaching staff of having complete understanding of the system with those veterans gone, you kind of had to rebuild that all over again.
Yeah, and we saw that really in full display, right, in the first game of the season. Alex, why don't you just go ahead, and you did a couple of really, really good scouting reports on Galactic Tribune. If you haven't checked out those articles, guys, go ahead. And I think you prefaced a lot of this stuff, but just let, really quickly in a couple of minutes here, just let the people know what we're receiving in these two young players.
Yeah, for sure. So if you subscribe to Galactic Tribune, again, it's free to subscribe. Whenever the Galaxy are making signings, and I know that players are going to be coming to the club, I write these scouting reports to make sure that you know what the Galaxy is getting, what they did to get on the Galaxy's radar, and what they're going to provide in Greg Vanney's system. So the first player we're going to talk about here is Lucas Sanabria from Uruguay, coming from Nacional, one of the biggest clubs in Uruguay. And the one thing with Sanabria, I think that stood out is that he's very much a Mark Delgado-like player, in which he has the similar attributes of an engine on both sides of the offense and the defense. The fact that he's able to kind of play on that right side as well, and that's kind of where Mark Delgado played a lot. And the other thing is, he did play kind of all over the midfield last year for Nacional as a 6, as an 8, even sometimes as a 10. But that was in very rare instances. But look, he's 21. He's got this engine and this motor. Marcelo Bielsa, the head coach of the Uruguayan national team, called up Sanabria in the November window. So he's definitely on the radar of the Galaxy and the national team. And this is a player with a pretty high ceiling. The one thing I did note from my scout report, which we'll talk about Lucas in a little bit right now, is that he's not used to these high volume possession teams. During the regular season with Nacional, he averaged maybe around 35, 36 passes attempted per game. And then you compare that to Mark Delgado, Gaston, Brugman, and Edwin Cerrillo. Those three as a trio on average combined for around 60 passes per game. So that's a huge leap in intake of what Sanabria is going to have to do, get used to. So kind of playing within this possession style is new for him. And, we're going to dive into that and how Lucas struggled against San Diego. And yeah, you can see this map right here of Lucas Sanabria. It very much looks like Mark Delgado's heat map, where almost every blade of grass in midfield is covered. So that's one of the things the LA Galaxy saw in Lucas, that this guy can kind of just play all over the field. And if they can, develop him, again, he's still a very young player, still a raw prospect, but if they can develop him, he can get a basically younger version of Mark Delgado with less mileage on his legs.
Yeah, this heat map, by the way, guys, just to make it crystal clear, this is not the heat map from San Diego. This is his heat map on the sort of combined stats for his season last year at Nacional. So yeah, that was the first thing I thought of. This looks very, very similar to Mark Delgado's. But let's talk about another guy that can cover a lot of ground as well, Alex, which is this guy right here.
Yeah, Elijah Wynder out of Louisville City. This is a guy that a lot of people in USL were really, really high on. He did have a bit of an injury earlier in his career, was able to come back from that. And the reason why that's so impressive to me is his play style is very different from Gaston Brugman and Mark Delgado. He's a bigger, physical, more kind of bruiser type of midfielder. He's got a bigger physical frame. Very much a engine type midfielder, kind of like Sanabria. But the thing with him is that, the way he's able to kind of just move and glide across the pitch, there's some power with it. And we didn't really have that a lot with the LA Galaxy, given that, Riqui Puig obviously isn't the biggest guy in the world. Mark Delgado as well. Gaston really wasn't like that, big physical number 6. But Elijah Wynder, he adds that. And the one thing with Wynder is you can show on the next slide right here is that he can be a good threat in the offense. It's not just him, doing things and like a midfielder who's just good off the ball and pressing, things like that. On the ball, he can be productive. He can be goal dangerous. You can see he was in the 81st percentile for shots among, midfielders in USL, which again is growing in competitiveness. Obviously not at the level of MLS, but the fact that you're a 20-year-old and one of the best players in your league is not something to brush away. XG was pretty high. He can be a guy that's really great if you want to crash into the box, given he's a bigger guy. He can add that little quick sprint and physicality. And also, too, just the fact that he's able to win 79% of his duels, the fact that he's able to kind of, be efficient when it comes to taking on other players. I think that he's really going to be able to, develop that part as he learns in MLS. And similar to Sanabria, the one thing Wynder really needs to kind of learn and get used to is just that higher load of passes that he's going to have to do, having to play within possession, having to kind of learn the patterns of play as the LA Galaxy season goes on. Again, it's not really a huge concern at the moment because, we're assuming given with time, that's going to get better. But yeah, Wynder, really good prospect as well.
Yeah, I think the attributes are there. The interesting thing and the thing that Greg Vanney and his coaching staff are going to have to, coach and manage and really elevate these attributes via training, Alex, is just translating his abilities from the USL into a league like MLS, right? Which is a step up. Not a lot of players get signed from USL, but there's been recent successes like Diego Luna, for example. So I think that's sort of on Vanny's shoulders. And, hopefully, I'll talk about this a little bit later too, but maybe there are some certain matches or matchups, certain games that we need Wynder to start from the very beginning, right? Alex, speaking of, though, starting, you did want to mention a little bit about Marco Reus because he's that sort of third part. He's more like the number 10 in this midfield. But you wanted to bring up an important note about him as we go through the season.
Yeah, I think the one thing with Marco Reus is, obviously that he's really gonna, not that player he was a couple of years ago, right? Where he can be super dynamic, where he can change the game in an instant. Obviously now with age and, he's had injury history throughout his career. He's gotten a little more static, I'd say. And it's gonna be interesting to kind of see the minutes that he's gonna play this year. So are we gonna see more minutes for Sanabria and Wynder together? How is that going to shift the chance creation and things like that? And, just briefly, I'll talk about it right now. Against San Diego, he was very good in possession moments, but aside of that, didn't really add anything else to the attack. Felt like he was, MIA during the build-up moments. Obviously, he's not Riqui Puig, who's going to drop super deep and, want to take the ball off his center backs. But you could definitely see he didn't have as much of an imprint in this game. And look, the Galaxy got players who are young, who have a lot of mileage left in their careers. So they're hoping that those guys can cover for Marco Reus, where right now he's at the point of his career where he really can't be playing at that level and at that intensity he used to a couple of years ago.
Yeah, totally. And it wasn't you, Alex, that made that observation. I saw a lot of that observation within the Galaxy fan base. So you're not alone there. I think that's definitely well put. Before we get to the video footage, Alex, I did want to bring up just a high level stat. I think just if you look at the box score and to see sort of the imprint of or lack thereof of the midfield and really just the lack of Riqui Puig, right? And this is just a simple box score, so shout out Galaxy Comms for providing this. But Alex, you look at the possession stats. That's not typical for LA Galaxy. 49 to 51%. We usually dominate possession, right? And out of that possession, we created less than one XG, which is, again, guys, this is not just on the forwards. This is, and we'll talk about it a little bit. It has to do with the midfield and getting service right to that forward line. 9 shots to our 7 shots, and we only had 3 shots on target versus their 6. And I think you see sort of the deficiency in the midfield through those stats. Yeah, Alex, go ahead. You want to say
Yeah, I
something?
wanted to add this since you brought up the XG numbers. This is after the full 90 minutes, right?
Yeah,
I looked it up with the starters playing. So around 63 minutes when they made the first sub with Barry coming in. At that moment, up to then, the Galaxy had an XG of just 0.02.
right. Because of
So it
that
was
very
super
chance was
low.
the big chance.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a big chance that got there, and obviously had a couple more shots, a little more
Yep.
long range.
Great point.
But before the Barry one, it was even lower. So the starters really at all didn't create anything. It wasn't until the Galaxy started, being a bit more ambitious, kind of taking those chances and kind of pushing everyone forward that you got to see the XG number build up. But yeah, before that, it was even worse.
Yeah, no, that's a really great point. So, Alex, let's head on over to the video room because we've got a lot of footage that we want to pull up, especially in that midfield. But guys, before we do, just a reminder to subscribe and like this video. Again, it would really, really help us out on our march to 600. So, Alex, first key point, man. Greg talked about it post match. He used the word disjointed to describe the midfield. Why don't you get into that?
Yeah, let's roll the tape. The one thing with the midfield is that, look, you're losing guys who understand the patterns of play, understand where to be at all times. And in this clip right now, we'll pull up. It's going to be Lucas Sanabria here. Look at all the open space right there. And look at Greg
Yeah,
Vanny, who I've highlighted. Greg Vanny immediately yells that there's open space right there and tells Lucas to get in there. You see Lucas running there, but by the time he runs back to that space, the Galaxy have already lost possession. And now San Diego gets basically started possession in the Galaxy's, final third. So Lucas Sanabria not being in the right place, like we mentioned earlier, Mark Delgado, a player who already knew where to position himself or to be, he's doing that by himself because he knows what Vanny wants.
yeah,
Now you have Sanabria, who, like we mentioned earlier, hasn't really played in these high volume possession teams. He's a little bit lost. And Greg Vanny noticed that. He obviously yelled from the touchline that he wanted him to kind of get a little closer to the ball. And that ultimately cost the LA Galaxy possession. It cost them a buildup. And it gave San Diego, honestly, a bit more of momentum, knowing that they're starting an attack already in the attacking half.
yeah.
And that's all that teams need in order to build that confidence. And the Galaxy's players' confidence as well also went down.
Yeah, and we only not only saw the lack of positioning in the buildup, but also in this clip, Alex, in defensively as well.
Yeah, I mean, you can kind of just see here that look, the Galaxy are just trying to understand one another. And the one thing here, this clip is a little bit longer. It's just that the Galaxy is, trying to move their way through, trying to figure out where to be at. But there's not much intensity, obviously, because the players that are at the front line are a little older. But
Yeah,
Lucas
and you see
Sanabria just
Sanabria.
caught,
Yeah,
yeah, he's just
yeah,
caught ball watching for this entire sequence, and it leads to De La Torre getting the ball again in the attacking half, running at pace. And Sanabria is just ball watching, not tracking
yeah,
his runner. I wouldn't say he's breaking away from the system, but more he doesn't really know what to do off the ball a little bit. And again, it's not his fault. This is a new player, obviously on a new team, but you got to see that San Diego noticed that. They took note that, Lucas wasn't as connected, and that's where that disjointedness comes from, where, San Diego noticed a weak link and they attacked it. And, Lucas was caught ball watching a bit there. He was a little too focused and had a little too much gravity towards the ball. And San Diego were able to use that to their advantage. And again, run at full pace in the attacking third. And while this attack didn't lead to anything, it's that kind of stuff that demoralizes a team and takes away momentum from you.
yeah, absolutely. We used the word earlier, and this is a Vanny word of disjointed, but I'm gonna use another one, Alex. Dynamism or dynamicism. I don't know what he called. I forgot what he called it. Dynamism, something like that. But I think that's also a well put characteristic of what we saw on Sunday evening, which was just a lack of dynamism in ball progression, and also just the final ball, right? And again, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but that's where Riqui Puig really, really excels. And and I'm going to pull up these clips for you. So go ahead and narrate through that
Yeah,
as
so in
well.
this clip here, it's just going to be a bit of a build-up. Obviously, the Galaxy, 70th minute, you kind of have to chase the game, go forward, right?
Yeah.
Galaxy start the ball, in the middle half as well. But as you can see, San Diego's playing a little bit of a mid-block, trying to cut out the middle of the pitch. And most times you'd have Riqui Puig pull up and try to create combination passes, but they don't have that. So now they have to play wide. There's nothing there, and the possession goes all the way back to the goalkeeper. You're starting at the halfway circle, and then now you're going all the way back to your own penalty box. I mean, that kind of stuff, obviously we know Greg Vanny doesn't, or as we can see right here by Mitrovic, he just boosts it off, goes route one. And
Yeah.
that's what I was going to say. We know Vanny wants to play within these, little intricate plays, this little patterns where players are making runs and you're able to move the ball forward. He can't really do that because the disjointedness and the lack of, dynamism to have that key one-on-one ability to beat your man, where now you have to play the ball all the way back for the goalkeeper to boot, 50 yards away, and boom, San Diego get possession again because they win that duel. So yeah, you can kind of see right there that there wasn't that explosiveness. There wasn't that, I would say, flair to create your own
Or just speed through
pace.
the middle, right? Whether it's through the
Exactly.
carry or through the pass. Yeah.
Yeah, and so they're forced to play these sideways passes and backwards, and that's the lack of speed and verticality that Greg was talking about. They just didn't have that against San Diego.
Yeah. You know what's ironic as you were narrating through that, which is you said Ricky usually sort of drops back and drops the level of the ball, right? And picks it up from a center back. And it's funny that earlier on last season, fans were berating that. They were like, Ricky, what do why are you sort of, messing up or not playing within the system and sort of, being that, but then you realize what that actually does, and it's funny to see the contrast when you don't have them. What's that song? You don't know what you got until it's gone, right? And that's exactly it with Riqui Puig. But even if when we did have that nice vertical pass, Alex, there was still a lack of a final ball, and we're gonna see it in this clip right here.
Yeah, and then we're gonna see some clips right here where Lucas Sanabria gets the ball, two runners, Ramirez and Reus, just need to get the right weight on that pass, and he's just not able to do it. Again, I will give him the benefit of the doubt. It was on his, weaker left foot, but at the same time, when you're in positions in the final third, you have to be able to affect the game. You have to be able to at least give your teammates a chance, and that ball was just poor all around, whether it was intended for Ramirez or Reus. I mean, that kind of stuff, and given the limited opportunities in this game, and as we mentioned, the starters really didn't put much XG. Like that would have been a great chance right there. You would have had a one-on-one against a goalkeeper. You would have been able to create at least a big chance in this game. And the Galaxy just missing out on opportunities like that. And again, Riqui Puig, Mark Delgado, Brugman, all those guys had that final ball ability, and we all saw that sporadically during last season. And now you got these guys who, I don't want to say they lack the quality, but it's just unproven right now at the MLS level that they can be those guys to play the final ball.
Yeah. No, and by the way, guys, it almost it does seem like we're picking on Lucas Sanabria just a little bit, but really he played a majority of that game, right? And Greg really gave him the trust and the belief, right? Which is what you want as a coach. So I think if this is just more constructive, and I look, I have confidence. I'm sure you do too, Alex, that Greg and the coaching staff will work with him quite a bit over not just this week, but really the rest of the season, and to elevate his game. I think we know he has it in him, but I think Greg said this a couple times about a few players in the CVI. They're thinking too much. It's too mechanical for them, right? I think he said this about Wynder as well. So the last point that we wanted to make though, Alex, and this is an interesting one, because when we were preparing for the show, you were like, oh, that's not really in my footballing, lexicon, but I'll roll with it, right? But when I explained sort of the setup, it kind of made sense, which is I noticed just a lack of dueling capacity and winning balls in the midfield, which in lieu of Riqui Puig, I think that's definitely a way you need to progress the ball, right? In certain situations, not in all situations, but in certain situations. And the reason why I came to that conclusion was because I made this point last year on a show with Rob, which is I feel like the MLS Cup gave Vanny sort of a glimpse or a clue into what a successful midfield might look like during the MLS 2025 season, right? And remember, if you guys recall, in MLS Cup, he liked it to go with more of a workman-like midfield, completely sending us in a doozy, right? Because we were all debating Marco Reus, Diego Fagundes, Reus, Fagundes. Nope, Gaston Brugman at the end of the day. And that's probably just because more positional flexibility and just the ability to cover more ground. And I want to show you the stat, Alex, from that game in particular. Look at that, 55 duels won versus Red Bull, which is a very high dueling team, by the way. Red Bull is a very aggressive team. They have a lot of a high press situation and system. They only had 37, and so that was like, whoa, that was an eye opener for me. And I put together this little montage of things that I wish we saw in San Diego, right? So again, this is very, very beginning stages of the game. Gaston Brugman right there on the right-hand side chases all the way back. Emilio Garcia stops him, and Gaston perfectly timed tackle and smart veteran presence to win that foul. Here you go, sort of in the middle of the first half. Delgado loses the ball, but look at his desire, Alex. His desire to win that ball back and just tip it and regain possession for his team and recycle the ball. This last one, Edwin Cerrillo, right? A guy that we have on this team. Look at how confident he is in jumping that pass, giving it to Delgado, and we're off, right? We didn't score a goal from this particular play, but I looked at that and I was like, I think this is the move forward. I might be completely wrong about this, but clearly in a one-off game in MLS Cup, that was something that I thought, whoa, maybe this is a blueprint for Vanny to play next year. And unfortunately, man, if we go to the San Diego game, I didn't see enough of that, even when we were in good positions. We went through this clip earlier together, but it was interesting that, right here, Diego plays a ball in and we lose it. Marco Reus he attempts to pick up the ball, but look at this. It's basically 2v3 in the corner. We've got him pinned in, right? And in this position, you fancy the Galaxy to win the ball back. But as the play develops, just not enough aggressiveness. Diego's pointing, doesn't win that tackle. And then on the second play, Edwin Cerrillo is caught a little flat-footed. He doesn't know where to go or to go exactly into that tackle aggressively or to drop back. And in the end, we get a switch of play and San Diego going to the other side. So I think that's what I mean, man. It's like, can we use the legs and the youthfulness and the exuberance and all those dueling stats that we just saw with Wynder? Can we use that in certain phases, certain moments, certain oppositions? It's a question mark, but I think there's something there, Alex. What do you think?
Yeah, I think looking at the clip you brought up, Ananda, the one thing that stands out to me, and look, I'm not a guy with my footballing philosophy that
Yeah.
loves to emphasize the press. He's like that Ralph Ragnick quote, like you're either you're not just a little pregnant, you're either pregnant or you're not, you're either press or you're not.
Right.
Pressing really for me, or like the intense pressing, isn't really a thing I'm too much into, but you kind of do need to be able to kind of force the opponent to have those desperation moments, right? And in those clips in MLS Cup that you showed, the one pattern is that the Galaxy put the Red Bulls in positions to basically, boot the ball away or, play in these moments where you kind of have to win the duel, right? And given the clip you showed right now, that's an excellent, excellent clip to emphasize the point that the Galaxy just didn't force San Diego to boot the ball up. They didn't force them to, panic and trigger just booting it up the field and clearing the ball away. In that clip, we saw them kind of play out of that press, and then switch the play and then restart the possession. That kind of stuff kills you and drains you. And during 2023, when the Galaxy had that really bad year, Greg Vanny emphasized a lot that, they were just being drained off the ball too much. And that's the stuff that's going to kill you off the ball and going to lower your confidence, going to lower your ability, not just in your to defend, but just your ability to kind of be like, okay, we can take control of this game and stuff like that, where you allow the opponent to basically reset possession. That's tiring. That takes out a lot of energy. And then everybody has to, get back to position. Everybody has to kind of reset the defense. And that stuff is tiring because you're playing
Yeah.
off the ball for a while. You tend to lose focus. You tend to be able to kind of, wander off into different spaces. And we saw the clip earlier, right, of Lucas Sanabria where he's ball watching a lot. Like you're gonna have moments like that where before you know it, you have De La Torre running at full speed into the attacking third. So that's definitely a concern for the Galaxy and something that we should definitely be paying attention to in the next couple of games, just to see if that defensive intensity is there. Because like you showed at the start with that stat of MLS Cup, the Galaxy showed up to play, to win every duel. And if the Galaxy can, get close to that in most of their games where, they're outworking the other teams, then they'll have a chance for sure.
Yeah, I mean, again, just to accentuate it, we won 43 out of 43 duels won for the LA Galaxy, 42 for San Diego. And again, a lot of this number, you look at that stat and you're like, oh, okay, we did okay. But a lot of it was in Gaches, man. He won 12 duels, and that was a huge portion of the duels. But again, he's winning duels, Alex, in our own half. Yes, it's important to thwart off attacks, etc. But I'd like to see that sort of more in the middle and further up the pitch as well. But Alex, usually we cap these episodes off with one key question, right? So the key question here is, what's the one thing you want to see the midfield improve over the next few weeks? And by the way, full disclosure, Alex, I know the answer, but Alex told me before, and I was like, dude, that's a really, really good point, because I noticed the same thing. Anyways, I'm going to let you take it because I think it's an interesting point.
Yeah, it's the one guy, Pineapple Pen, right? Mickey Yamane, he's the guy. Look,
Apple Pen.
Apple Pen. I mean,
Yeah.
we all remember that moment. That was hilarious. But look, Mickey's a great player for a couple of reasons. One, he's just the dog. He works hard, doesn't complain, he just comes to work every day. Second thing that comes to mind is he is just a smart, high IQ player. I can't praise him enough. The way he's able to play as a traditional fullback, going down and up the wings, as an inverted fullback, playing in the midfield. And that's exactly what the LA Galaxy need. They need more impact from Mickey Yamane in the midfield. And we're going to get into some of the more film right now of Mickey just being that wild card for the LA Galaxy. Look at Mickey right here in this clip. You can kind of see him kind of playing in that midfield a little bit, being that extra body there. And look, he anticipates where the space is going to be at. The ball is going to be played to him. He's going to play to Gabriel Peck right here. Boom, ball into the final third. And the Galaxy quickly, and Mickey, I think, had the most balls into the final third. I think he had 12 on the night, which is the most by any LA Galaxy
Game
player
high, 4
against
chances
San Diego.
Yep.
Yeah, so he was putting balls in the right places. He was putting the players in the right places to create moments of magic. And we know Gabriel Peck, when he's isolated one-on-one, 9 times out of 10, you're going to bet on Gabriel Peck to beat his man because he has that ability. And the Galaxy really didn't have that many moments in this game where Gabriel Peck was able to show his individual brilliance. Here's another play right here where Mickey just, again, the IQ to read the spaces, to add support to Gabriel Peck, who's out wide. The ball is going to be played to Gabriel Peck here. But look, Mickey's allowing the space right there to attract the center back so that Peck, can play that ball, which unfortunately wasn't good. But also, like I said earlier, it allows Peck to be 1v1 against a defender in open space. And everyone's going to take that bet, whether it's Peck against whoever it may be. So it gave Peck that space, and it gave the Galaxy an extra runner in the attack. And he's a smart guy because he knows how to read those spaces. Last year was Mark Delgado doing that a lot last year. Now you really don't have that. And we mentioned Lucas Sanabria just isn't there yet at getting the pattern to play. So Mickey Yamane on that right side is really taking that, Mark Delgado role of imitating those runs, which is, basically running at the baseline, cutting it back, overlaps, underlaps, things like that. He understands how to do. And I think he's going to be really, really essential for the LA Galaxy to kind of get back on track in the midfield and just, add that more verticality, because while Mickey, might not be going up and down the field like that, he can allow other players to do that. And that's what the Galaxy need. Get your DPs, get your good players in the spots to be effective in the final third. And I think Mickey's going to be key to that.
Especially without Riqui Puig, right? And even Alex, when we did, if you recall, we did a GaTacticos around the El Tráfico match and the lessons learned. And we saw how important Mickey Yamane was, right, in that game, and the positions that he was taking up, especially in the second half, when he was not only flooding the midfield, but really flooding the right side, creating those 3v2s, 2v1s. And so he's a really important player, man. Rob and I said Diego Fagundes and Mickey were probably the best players we saw personally at CVI. So can't wait to see his progression. I think he's shown that he's very comfortable now with his team. Very different conversation than we were having at this point a year ago. So I agree with you, man. I can't disagree with you in terms of Mickey Yamane's importance in that midfield. And I think just to add to that, my point was going to be a slight pivot, which is just simply getting the midfield balance right, Alex. I said on the last pod with Rob this idea about, and I think it's just idea of was it a blip or is this the new norm, right? And I think I think you might have asked that question to Greg post match, but one of the things I said was I think it's going to be key how Greg pivots or augments his system, especially in that midfield, to cover not having Riqui Puig in that midfield. And I think the answer to that question is going to be how quickly does he find the solution and how sustainable that solution is, right? Mm-hmm. And if that doesn't happen, so that's really going to dictate how successful we are. And so to that point, I think the balance is a key facet of that, Alex, which is, are there games when maybe you forego the services of Marco Reus and you need a little more verticality, channel running, along with even a guy like Miguel Berry? We saw it in the second half, right? Do you put a Wynder in there, or do you even put Diego in that 10 position where he played very well there last year as well, right, Alex? So I feel like it's just up to Greg on just finding the right balance. And of course, Mickey Yamane as that joker in there, right? Just finding the right balance to see how all these skill sets match, because I think the skill set's there. I just think the balance is off. And like you said earlier, there's a level of disjointedness. There's just a lack of chemistry, which, by the way, guys, naturally will get better over time. So that stuff takes time. But I think it's just the balance, because like you said, Marco Reus didn't have his best of games, but maybe, Alex, because of his skill set, because we can't expect him to play 90 minutes every game, maybe that wasn't the game for him. I'm not sure, right? This is more of a question mark. This is stuff for Greg Vanney and his staff to figure out. But I think once we get that balance right, people will start getting comfortable, getting in the right positions. We'll have better ball progression, better dynamism, and all that good stuff. So I think it's just about getting the balance right, man.
Yeah, I totally agree with you, Ananda. Look, Greg Vanney is a coach who has a proven track record of improving younger players and making them play to their potential. We're seeing that with Edwin Rio, of course, Gabriel Peck last year, and even older players like Mickey Yamane. He's getting the most out of him this year, right? Emiro Garces has been amazing on the defensive end. Joveljic took some time to develop, but I mean, he was amazing last year. So I think it's going to be a bit of patience for the LA Galaxy here in these next couple of weeks and just this year overall, because, like we mentioned with Sanabria, like with Wynder, and just other players as well, like they're new guys. I mean, Mateus Nascimento is going to add a different dynamic as well if he plays as number 9, because he's a totally different player than Christian Ramirez, for sure. So that's another chapter that, we might have to make a GaTacticos video in the future, regarding Nascimento and what he can bring, and if it's going to be a good thing. But yeah, I think it's going to take time, and I think fans should give Greg Vanney that time because he has that proven track record. He brought you a championship with players that he made better. So I think he's going to do that with Sanabria. He's going to do that with Wynder. It's just about being patient. And look, it's a long season. Season doesn't end until December. So as long as the Galaxy are hot December and, in that final stretch, that's all that matters.
As a wise man once said, patience is virtue. All right, guys. So you heard our takes on the one thing the midfield needs to improve over the next few weeks, or the one thing that we want to see improve. But what do you think? Go ahead and give us your takes in the comment section of this video, and let's have a conversation about this online. Like I always say, Alex and I will respond to every one of your comments. But Alex, time to sign off now, man. But it was a pleasure doing this with you always, and hopefully we do another one soon. Like you said, the Nacimiento might be a good one. So if you guys do like this type of content and want us to do more, of course, let us know by hitting the like button, leaving a comment, giving us some feedback. We'd really, really appreciate it. But before we sign off, Alex, go ahead and remind the folk where they can engage with you online, man.
Yes, you can find my LA Galaxy coverage at thegalactictribune.org, and you find me on X for LA Galaxy News, just general talk about the club, analysis, and just to find out where and more stuff about the LA Galaxy that I'm doing is coming out, like this GaTacticos video, so you can find that at ALXRUIZ15.
Check him out, guys. All right, so for Alex Ruiz, my name is Ananda Kirana, one half of Cuna Galaxiana. We'll be back with another episode again soon. To know when the next show is dropping, go ahead and hit those notification bells on YouTube and follow us on all of our socials at Cuna Galaxiana. And again, guys, we're on the march to 600, so go ahead and hit that subscribe button if you do like what you're listening to, or if you just like Alex more than me. That works too. I'll take that. So till next time, guys, take care, y'all, and G's up.